podcast. Today we have a behind the business. We're going a little off script today, so we're not really doing the procession of events like we've been doing in recent past on the past episodes, which we'll get back to because I feel like we have a lot going on now that will be valuable for listeners to hear and whatnot. But I was thinking a lot recently, just kind of where we're at in the process and how much of a grind that it is. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions about entrepreneurship and having a business, and especially doing what we're doing, which is playing hockey full time in school and running the business full time at the same time. And I think a lot of people talk about this. Andy Frisella is one that's you know, a big critic on this side of things about the quote unquote hustle culture, but what people really think is hustling versus in reality what is hustling. And I think that we have some valuable stories from day one that is really just kind of a testament of our will to like make this happen. Gary Vee talks about it a lot, and this is really why I started doing it in the beginning when I was, when Gary Vee was really of help and support to entrepreneurs, that people that really want to go down that path. And one of the things that he talked about was just reaching out to everybody you possibly could, in the early days. And obviously Instagram has always been our main platform. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to start reaching out to people and just trying to get like ambassadors and affiliates and stuff like this. And I remember that when we first started and we launched the website and everything like that, every single day. So I forget what the exact algorithm was and what Instagram had limitations on, but they basically had a message limit. You could send a certain amount of messages in a certain period of time before they considered it like you were spamming. And I would cap that out every time. So I think it was twice a day I could do it. And I believe, if I remember correctly, it was 12 hours. So I would send like between 50 and 100 messages on Instagram before I get a message error from Instagram saying like you can no longer send any messages for the next X amount of time before you can do it again. And that was DMs, but it was also comments. And there was this one incident of reaching out that has always stuck in my head. And because it kind of made me realize just how cutthroat things are, and like people don't really give a shit. Like they really don't care who you are, what you have to say, unless you're something of value and you've proven yourself. And I commented and DM'd multiple times Joey Swoll, and which I don't even remember. Like, what does he do? He's just a fitness influencer.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's
he
basically
doesn't
just
compete or anything.
yeah, he doesn't compete or anything like that. He's basically just a fitness influencer with a big following. And I had been reaching out to him, like I'd always set follow up, so I followed up with him multiple times, comment on all his posts and everything like that. And he commented back on one of the posts, and he said something along the lines of, this isn't verbatim, but something along the lines of, you guys are always trying to steal the spotlight from me and take from those who have worked their ass off to get to where they want to be. And I was like, in my head at the time, I was like, is that really what I'm trying to do, or am I just trying to grow a business? So like I had this kind of moment of reflection on the whole thing, and then I came to the conclusion that the guy's kind of an asshole, and that's not really something that you want to do to somebody that's trying to build something. Like all these people who have built these large followings, built these successful businesses, you should want to turn around and help those people. You know what I mean? And I think we had a call today that was very impactful, and I remember reading about him on some article. I think it was SBA or something like that. And this was, you know, a version of what he said, but it was a quote. And basically he said, I'm always willing to turn back and give a helping hand to the next guy, including competitors. And that really stuck out to me, because if you're really good at what you do, you will always win, regardless of the competition that you have. So giving your secret sauce or your strategy or whatever it is, no one should be able to beat you at your own game if you're masterful at it. You know what I mean? And I thought that was pretty powerful for me, because I think we've seen too in the beverage space overall that people are more than willing to help out, more than willing to support. And it's all about like what we always go back to about building your network, building relationships. And, but yeah, I just thought that story was something that still impacts me today, because I'm like, almost, it's just adding to that list of proving people wrong. I got a long list of people that up here that I can think about that really helps keep going in the tough times. You know, where it is a grind, where hustling feels like you're just kind of spinning your wheels and you're not getting anywhere. You're not getting the result that you want, but you still show up and do it anyways.
No, 100%. And, like we said with the call today and just our network, like we've seen who we've been able to connect with over the last, I mean, really, I guess since the launch of the product, but even more specifically in the last year, let's say, like connections with
Hmm.
even Eric. Look at how that originated from DECA. And, you look at the list of investors that we have now, where they all originated from, and just the willingness of the small business community, or even, I guess you could say, the entrepreneurial community, like to help each other out. Joe gets us connected with the guys at Defendify, and that's how we end up having this meeting
Hmm.
today. But it's all just through connections and, people willing to help each other. Look at, Brickyard. Oh yeah, we can reach out to so and so, and we connect loco, and it just kind of goes back and forth. Of with people that are trying to do the same things, that have the same goals as us, that are trying to either build a personal brand, or build a brand in general. They're all entrepreneurs in a sense, and it's really neat to see the community in the way it is kind of all intertwined.
Yeah, yeah, and I think on the topic of hustling and really just brute force, like Andy Frisella talks about, he's like, in the beginning, in the early days, it's brute force. Like you find a way to make it work. And I think in meeting all these people, we've got to see the other side of them too, and their business and kind of what they're doing. And you can almost see it with how they carry themselves, right? Like how busy they are and how much they're actually working, and there's been plenty of times where I'll fire off an email on Saturday night or something like that, responding to somebody, and for example, like the Loco guys, right? Like they'll respond on a Saturday night, or the Defendify guys are replying back on a Sunday morning or something like that, and it's like that's hustling, right? Like that never stops. The game never ends, and I think that a lot of people that have this misconception of what it actually takes, because we don't even really know what it takes yet, but we're still showing up every day. Like we're getting the job done. We're putting in the hours. We're putting in the work. And I think that it really helps to have this network because you get to really understand like what are they doing to succeed at the end of the day. I think we get to see that from a few different vantage points. Like obviously from the founder standpoint is the most valuable for us because we're founders ourselves. So we get to kind of see like what they're doing on a daily basis. And obviously I think that's something that we always try and take away from meeting people who have been there, done that. So we can kind of see like, are we doing enough? Are we doing the right things? Are we on the right path? And I think today you kind of laughed when he was talking about it, but we were talking with another founder today in the he's on the alcoholic side of things, but he was talking about how many samplings and demos he would do in the early days. He's like, that's what it takes. Like that was the strategy I had. That was the hustling. Like I would spend hours on end, and you started laughing, and I was like we're doing that, and it feels good to hear those kinds of things because it makes you feel like you're on the right track and you're doing the right thing. Because my God, I mean, we've done a sampling how many weekends in a row where we're driving back to Massachusetts to do Hanford samplings that have been super effective for us and have opened the door for us for more opportunity. But that's hustling. Like it's Saturdays, it's Sundays. You're sampling all day, and you got to fit in everything else around that keeps the business going.
Yeah, and even his comment too, he made one later about the ability to track data and use the data to your advantage. Like you need to know, and he's like, I use Salesforce for this. And, he kind of gave his methodology for keeping track, and it's like, well, we have a Google sheet and we keep track of every single sampling. Like maybe you can call it old school or maybe just poor, but it does the same job. It gets the job done, and we have all the data. We have
Yeah.
all of that, and yeah, it has presented us with the opportunity of possibly expanding. And um, I've been thinking about that conversation today too. It kind of gives you a perspective on you don't want to grow too quickly. And it also ties into another conversation that we had with Cliff Morgan as well, where Cliff talked about, okay, yes, all this opportunity is great. You talk about your opportunity with Seasons or Energy North or Hannaford's expansion or Market Basket or, whatever it might be. The opportunity is great. And I can see it in your eyes, he says, but what I see is you need to raise more money to be able to support it. So every time you have a new opportunity, it's you need more capital to support that opportunity.
Mhm.
And he's right. And, I was thinking about that today when, we were speaking with Mike, and he got into more specifically the Hannaford launch for us. And you don't want to grow too quickly, and it makes you think, okay, we've hustled our asses off, and that hustle has been why we've had the success that we've had in Hannaford's. Now, if we were to project that out on a you know 189 store level compared to 16, we're not going to be able to
Hmm.
hustle like that and be in 189 places every weekend. We know that, and so it does. It makes you think, okay, our hustle can only go so much and go so far and do so much. And he talks about automating that, and it needs to be an extension of you. Um, it just kind of puts it all in perspective to really think about how carefully we play our cards or lay our cards down for this next level of
Hmm.
growth in the company, and specifically with Hannaford, since that's been our bread and butter, and the opportunity that we've really wanted to seize this whole time. Um, but not, I guess that was a little off topic, but it was neat to hear what he had to say today, and
Yeah.
a lot of the things that he said we're doing, which was nice to hear. And I feel that that's been a common theme with a lot of the other founders
Hmm.
or high level business professionals that we've been able to speak with. They all have added value in different ways, and it's also been a reality check for us. Okay, yes, like we're doing that. That's good to hear. We've heard that from multiple people, which is good.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting that, I mean, what you just said too, if you really pick it apart and dive into it, it's interesting how every person has a different perspective on an idea or strategy or whatever it might be. And one thing that really stuck out to me today about what Mike said is, and he said it multiple times, I don't know your business. I don't know what you guys are trying to do. This is just from my perspective and what I've been able to do. And when you really break it down, it's like, okay, one, totally different industry, two, totally different time frame, and
Mhm.
ultimately three, like different goals, right? And I think when you really look at what we're trying to do, and this is why I mentioned to him today that like Hannaford and Market Basket is the be all end all of the Northeast, right? And if we're trying to build out of the Northeast, that's our main goal. We want to capitalize on that. And the energy drink space, as we know, there's more and more coming out every single day. So basically, what we're trying to do is sprint a marathon, right? While try to, minimize our mistakes along the way. And going back to what you were saying about like, we only have so much manpower, right? We've seen so much success from doing samplings and stuff like that. It's like, okay, what's our bandwidth? What's our actual human capital or human labor that we're able to put into this when we do a chain wide expansion. But if you take the safe route and you don't proceed with that opportunity of expansion, then you're limited to what you have currently, right? And I think all the conversations that we have, whether you talk about investors, whether you talk about distributors, what do they look for? They're looking for those big chains. They're looking for those bigger opportunities that are going to be revenue drivers for them. And I think the last thing that you want to do is miss your window of opportunity by playing it safe. You know what I mean? In the sense of, okay, maybe this opportunity isn't here next year for expansion if we were to theoretically turn it down because some other energy drink player came in and they're taking them instead. You know what I'm trying to say?
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
And, we can talk about this off, but like you got to be very. I think we need to be careful about
yeah.
how quickly we grow. Like, okay, like you said, we could be if we have all these opportunities. Like Hannaford goes chain wide. All of a sudden, we get this meeting with Market Basket. Seasons is next week. Energy North, Wegmans, and then it's like, holy shit. Okay, like you give the plant too much fertilizer and water, and you snuff it out.
Hmm.
Um, you just got to be so meticulous with the decisions at this stage.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it is, and this is where the approaches could be different in my opinion, where like, okay, you have supply, right? You have the retail locations, you have the opportunity, you're getting into different accounts. How are you creating the demand off of that? And I think the demand is where you can get very creative with it. And I think a lot of it, there's a few different aspects you go about it, whether you're talking about the can design and how that resonates with the person who's looking at it and who's shopping, whether, kind of what we're doing with the whole cardboard displays and everything like that, which I think is a testament of us hustling. It's a result of that, right? Like we collect data, we get feedback from the samplings, and we're literally putting what resonated with people at those samplings on the cardboard displays to be that as like our a branch of us, another person that is there, acting and advocating for the brand when we aren't there. And I think things like that can go a long way. And kind of tying this into the relationships and building your network is that the opportunity for influencers, further investments when you reach a certain point, has all been a testament of us building those relationships. I mean, Cliff Morgan's a perfect example. He has access to all these influencers and all these potential marketing opportunities like Piranha. Like Piranha was actually introed us to Cliff, but it could have been vice versa as well,
Mhm.
where something like that comes up to actually create that demand for the product when you have the opportunity for supply. So, but at the end of the day, I think the takeaway that I had from Mike is that the hustle never ends. He's still hustling today,
Mhm.
and I think that a lot of people kind of misconstrue it. And David Goggins talks about this all the day, where I mean, all the time, where you get to a point in your career or your sport or your business where you think that you've arrived and you've made it and there's nowhere else to go. Like, that's just never going to be the case. There's always going to be more. There's always going to be more opportunity and more impact that you can make. So that's something that I always think about, and it's nice to hear other people kind of have that same vision, the same mindset with their own businesses.
Mhm. For sure. And I guess one story too, back on the topic of hustle, I think back to when we first launched, like I think even the launch story ties into it. It was just like we're in the middle of preseason, sophomore year. Like I remember having fitness testing that week. I know we've told this story, but we hop on a plane Friday night, produce Saturday, come back Saturday night. We're there Sunday. Like just right from the beginning, it was just like guns a blazing. And I remember when we finally launched the product October 12th, like coming up on 2 years here real quick. Tomorrow's what, the 10th and the 9th. So
Yeah.
we're 4 days away from 2 years of officially launching Underdog or Underdog Energy. And like I remember those early days of I remember gassing classes to go meet with gyms and like deliver cases in the middle of nowhere. Like that one gym in like it was kind of like
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
you know what I'm gonna say.
Forward Fit.
Yes, Ford Fitness. Yes, yes, yes. Like it was like 3 hours away in the middle of nowhere. I was like, I'm bringing 10 cases up. I couldn't even find the front of the gym. I'm walking around with these cases. Like, what am I doing? Like those are the days, and then it's like rip back and go to a night class, and it's like just a whirlwind. And even now, it feels like that too, especially just with the way our schedules are set up and the timing of practice and whatnot. But it's like it's a 12-hour day every day. And those beginning stages, like when we didn't know what, like we had a plan, but we didn't know if like this is the strategy that we were going to carry out long term. And it started with, the gym partnerships, which is still, yes, don't get me wrong, a piece of the business today and, a part of the sales strategy. But it was like, okay, we need to be in gyms. We need to talk to every gym owner we know. Like we're creating spreadsheets of gyms, reaching out to them cold, visiting, dropping off samples, like just trying to do everything while still going to school full time and playing hockey like we are now. But I think it was just like we have a better grasp on everything. And, I know we've talked about this topic before, like the battles don't get any easier, but you have the tools to fight them. Like the battle certainly isn't any easier today. It's definitely harder, but we have the tools and we just have a better grasp on like how to manage this and run it and what we're trying to
Hmm.
do. Back then it was just like kind of willy-nilly. Like we didn't know what we were getting ourselves into, really. All of a
Hmm.
sudden we just had, you know, 2,000 gallons of underdog energy show up in your
Yeah.
backyard and it's like, all right, like here we go kind of thing. Like we're selling energy drinks, like we didn't know what the fuck we were doing. We need to reach
Yeah.
out to gym owners now. Like it was just
Yeah.
crazy. And like we just have such a better grasp on it, approaching 2 years. Okay, now we're working with distributors. We're getting into the retail space. Like it's a much more mature, I mean, we've matured, but the business is much more mature in the way we are going about it. I think
Hmm.
at this point, like we've learned so much and it shows. Um, but one thing that doesn't change is the hustle. Like it's still a battle every single day. I think there's less of like the running around to gyms right now and a lot more computer time and answering
Hmm.
emails, especially with getting ready for a production run and the communication with distributors and whatnot. Um, but that part of it never changes. Hasn't changed and never will.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's funny too. Like, I wonder if I still have it on a USB drive somewhere or something. But our original business plan that we
Oh
came out with,
God.
like 50 something pages long, the amount of times that we've changed that thing over the years, just like because we're like, ooh, this is a new strategy or avenue that can be effective on top. And it's not like we're changing everything, right? I think it's small iterations of it that change over time that ultimately, you know, it's a benefit. If you stick to your original business plan, I think if you talk to every single company that ever existed that had a business plan, they've changed their business plan. If they stuck with the same business plan they had at the start, they wouldn't be a business. They wouldn't be
Mhm.
successful. Like it's not possible because you learn so much in the process. And I'm glad we made that because it's very effective for us to conceptualize and understand where we want to go, but the steps that we take to get there ultimately change. It's not an A to B, it's a freaking A, C, Z, Y, like all over the place. But you're right. I think, you learn a lot by just doing. And we've talked about that I don't know how many times, but I feel like a lot of people are hesitant to do things like this because there is uncertainty. There's uncertainty every single day. I mean, every day you could wake up and there could be a massive problem that you need to face and you need to figure out a solution for. I mean, we've had, I don't know how many of those that ultimately it's brute force, going back to brute force. Like we find a way to make it work, you know,
Mhm.
and, trying to maintain, um, and ethical practices along the way. Like I think that's where a lot of businesses get themselves into trouble is where when they get into trouble and they use unethical practices to get out of those troubles. I think that's where things get difficult. That's where you see a lot of products change over time. I mean, I think a perfect example in the energy drink space is like using artificial ingredients. Like they damn well know those aren't good for you.
Mhm.
They know those aren't of benefit to their consumer, even if they're coming off as a quote unquote healthy alternative or whatever it might be. Those are unethical practices in my book. And I think that cutting those kinds of corners ultimately trickles down into the rest of the business. And you're not going to be a long term thing. Regardless of all these successful brands that are out there right now, they're going to be gone in a flash just because of, their improper business practices. So, just yeah, I don't know. We kind of went on a tangent there. I went on a tangent there, went off in a different direction. But I mean, we have so many freaking stories. I mean, if you haven't listened to the launch day, I forget what episode it is, but the title in it is literally launch day, and we cover basically our whole first trip down to Georgia and everything like that. And I think that is a very accurate representation of how everything has gone, and ultimately like hustling, like just making it happen. So be sure to listen to that. And obviously, we're going to get back on track. We actually have a lot of interviews coming up. I think we got 3 or 4 on the books right now. So we're going to try and flip flop everyone, do a behind the business, then a behind the underdogs, and kind of keep that train rolling. Try to give you guys more insights to athletes and businessmen and women, because I think there's a lot of value in that because we learn so much from like we always talk about the networking relationships. I think this is kind of a vessel for that to give you guys that opportunity as well. So be on the lookout for those and stay tuned. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at underdog_brand. Um, you know, follow us, subscribe on your streaming platform, leave a review if you can. It's super helpful for us to get some feedback from you guys and ultimately what you want to hear and what you don't want to hear. So be sure to do that and be on the lookout on Instagram. Like I said, it's where everything goes down, all of our social media content, snippets that we post, brand updates, and everything like that. And obviously, UD Energy, like we don't really talk about this at the end very much on the podcast, but check out our store locator on our website. It's basically got every location that we're currently in, obviously in the Northeast. So be sure, we appreciate you guys to if you support Hannaford. Obviously, we're in all the Hannaford locations in Massachusetts. So if you're local, make sure to grab some. You'll thank me later. Trust me. But we'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you for listening.